Going back to Ukraine, I think it is also important to acknowledge that although there are some benefits to Ukraine or joining the EU, that there could genuinely be some drawbacks to them joining the EU as well. I mean, we've seen this with a lot of other European countries actually quite as well. For example, yes, there is open migration and free migration, and that's great because you can move to resources and get better jobs and things like that. But it can cause, for example, something like a brain drain within the country. All your academic skilled workers suddenly going off to work in either Germany or France or these other places with great institutions where they can get higher wages and living standards are better. Suddenly all your skilled people are leaving the country, and particularly as we've already mentioned, 8 million people have already left Ukraine because of the war. So they've already got an issue for a very large country, a relatively small population base. What was it, 40 million approximately you were saying? That's 2/3 of what the UK population is, and the UK has a much smaller landmass size. Ukraine is a massive country geographically. It's a huge country. It's the largest country in Europe, I think, geographically, taking out Russia, of course. And so they're already going to have an issues with having enough people in order to exploit economic growth and things like that as is, let alone with potentially joining the EU and having a potential brain drain of all your skilled workers out into other European countries as well. So there are important aspects that you do have to look at this. Now, the EU, in joining the EU, there is usually some sort of package that the EU puts together to help with situations like this. Investment into infrastructure, schools, programs, and part of the reason, or at least the reason to give them for Britain leaving the European Union was that we were paying out more to the EU than we were getting back in that terms of that reinvestment. Now, it wasn't 350 million's worth as in terms of a net, that some of the campaigns legislatively could be also got about 180 million of that back. But there was a net, flow of funds into the European markets. Now, you can say whether that's positive or not. I would say potentially is, because you're creating infrastructure and networks that can create manufacturing facilities and industries that then can help facilitate the other European countries. But I think it is also important to note that it's not just a simple fix of, okay, Ukraine joins the EU, everything is solved. It could potentially actually have some very detrimental impacts, and these do have to be taken into consideration.
Yes, you're right. Thinking conceptually, fundamentally, long run, there might be solutions to such migration problems, because over time you have some regions overpopulated, the standard of living declines, people move back to another place. So in the long run, there might be good fixes. In the short run, you're right. If a huge country like Ukraine compared to the rest of Eastern Europe is accessed to the European Union, that would mean the displacement of population, brain drain, which you mentioned, but also some potential nationalistic sentiment. If, for example, Ukrainians come to France and start taking jobs. So yeah, I know politically it's not an easy solution, but I think that's why we have governments, regulation. There should be discussions of the benefits and of the costs. There should be some quantification, some precise calculation to the likely effects, and there should be some decisions that are made democratically, not in a dictatorial regime. So yeah, I agree. There are costs and benefits to every EU expansion, and that's why we have the role of policymakers to kind of evaluate the pros and cons and to take certain decisions, which in the short run would eliminate some tensions or conflicts. But in the long run, I think societies evolve in a way which allows them more leeway, more freedom, and so there are trends, there are reversals. Regions get rich, some stay rich, like London or Paris and these agglomerations. Others decline. For example, the coal mining, which in Britain and in Germany and in other countries developed some regions in the 50s and in the 60s. Now that's gone, so people change to different kind of industries which give different advantages. So I'm not that much concerned over the long run if Ukraine is part of the EU, because there will be natural tendencies in the population, in the movements of the population, in the rise and fall of different industries and centers that would generally adapt. But in the short run, that could create tensions, that could create bottlenecks.